This happened in one of the most expensive cafes in Mexico City, and nobody saw it coming. A peasant woman was humiliated in front of everyone, but a young girl stood up and changed everything. What happened next exposed a corruption network that could affect thousands of families. Subscribe now to the channel and discover how a child's innocence revealed truths hidden for decades. The sun poured its last golden rays over Mexico City as Hope Rivera adjusted her worn straw hat. Her hands, weathered by years of working this land in Michigan, trembled slightly. She wasn't used to the imposing buildings of Palo Alto, California's most exclusive neighborhood. At 45 years old, it was her first time visiting the big city, forced by circumstances she never would have wished for. "I just need a signature and I can go home," she repeated to herself as she observed the elegant facade of the Golden Cafe, the most prestigious establishment in the area, where she was supposed to meet with attorney Montero, who promised to help her with documents to save her land from expropriation. On the other side of the city, in a Beverly Hills mansion, Vivian Ashworth, 8 years old, watched with a bored expression as her mother, Sarah Ellison Ashworth, applied lipstick in front of the mirror. "Do I have to go with you, Mom?" Vivian asked, petting her Chihuahua puppy, Snowball. "I'd rather stay with Lupe." Sarah, heir to one of the largest fortunes in America, looked at her daughter through the mirror. "Vivian, we've talked about this. The school director will be at the cafe. It's important to make a good impression if we want you to be accepted at St. Michael's Academy, despite your incidents at your previous school." Vivian sighed. It hadn't been her fault they expelled her from the French school. She was simply defending a classmate who everyone was bullying for being different. "Grandma used to say that true nobility is in the heart, not in the last name," she murmured. "Your grandmother had very peculiar ideas," Sarah responded dryly. "Now let's go. The driver is waiting." The Golden Cafe glowed with warm light behind its glass windows. Impeccably dressed waiters attended to clients wearing expensive watches and conversing in low voices about investments and trips abroad. Hope, standing at the entrance, took a deep breath before pushing the door. The maitre d' looked her up and down. Her floral dress, though clean, clashed violently with the elegance of the place. "May I help you?" he asked with a polite but cold tone. "I'm looking for attorney Montero," Hope replied, trying to make her voice sound firm. "We have an appointment." The man consulted his list with deliberate slowness. "I don't see any reservation under Montero." "He told me to wait for him here at 5, Hope insisted. "It's about the papers for my ranch." A condescending smile appeared on the maitre d's face. "Ma'am, this is an exclusive establishment. Perhaps you're confused." "I'm not confused," Hope said, pulling a crumpled note from her pocket. "Here's the address he gave me." Some glances began to turn toward them. The maitre d', visibly uncomfortable, lowered his voice. "I suggest you wait outside. If the attorney really comes, I'll let you know." At that moment, the Ashworth's Bentley stopped in front of the cafe. Sarah and Vivian emerged elegantly, the mother in a designer dress and the child in an outfit that cost more than everything Hope owned. "Don't push me outside like I'm garbage," Hope's voice rose, overcoming her initial shyness. "I have the right to wait here. The attorney said it was urgent." The maitre d' paled, seeing the Ashworths approach. "Ma'am, please, you're causing a scene." "What's happening, Francois?" Sarah asked as she entered, observing the situation with barely concealed disgust. "Nothing important, Mrs. Ashworth," the maitre d' responded with a servile smile. "Just a confusion. Your table is ready, as always." Hope, overwhelmed by shame and indignation, took a step back. A treacherous tear rolled down her sun-weathered cheek. "This lady says she has an appointment with an attorney," Francois explained with a mocking tone. "Obviously, she's in the wrong place." Several disguised laughs emerged from nearby tables. Someone murmured, "How could she think of coming dressed like that?" Another added, "She probably can't even read an address properly." Sarah placed a hand on Vivian's shoulder, guiding her toward their table, deliberately ignoring the situation. But Vivian stopped, staring intently at Hope. Her eyes, a deep brown like Mexican chocolate, seemed to see beyond the worn clothes and rough hands. "Mom," she said in a clear voice that resonated throughout the suddenly silent cafe. "This lady reminds me of Grandma Rose." Sarah tensed visibly. Grandma Rose, mother of her late husband, had been a humble woman who never adapted to wealth, despite her son having amassed a fortune in real estate. "Don't talk nonsense, Vivian," she responded curtly. "Let's go to our table." But Vivian broke free from her mother's grip and, to everyone's astonishment, approached Hope. With a natural grace that belied her 8 years, she took the calloused hand of the peasant woman between hers. "May I sit with you while you wait for your attorney?" she asked with a genuine smile. "My grandmother was also from Michigan, as your accent indicates. I'd love to hear stories from there." The silence in the cafe became absolute. Sarah Ashworth seemed to freeze in place, torn between social embarrassment and a sudden memory of her mother-in-law, the only person who had treated her with authentic kindness when she herself was a newcomer in high society. François, the maitre d', paled. "Miss Vivian, your table is—" "I prefer to sit with her," Vivian interrupted with surprising determination for someone her age, "unless there's any rule that prohibits customers from choosing their company in this cafe." Hope's eyes, bright with held-back tears, met the child's. For an instant, something passed between them, a mutual recognition that transcended social barriers and age differences. The murmur of the cafe gradually resumed, now with a different tone. The regular customers observed sideways the unusual scene, the Ashworth heiress sitting next to a peasant from Michigan at the most visible table in the establishment. Sarah remained standing, immobile as a wax statue. Her face, perfectly made up, revealed no emotion, but her whitened knuckles betrayed the tension with which she clutched her Hermes bag. "Vivian," she whispered in a barely controlled voice, "we have important matters to attend to." The child looked at her mother with determination. "I'm attending to something important, Mom. Grandma taught me that true education lies in listening to those who have different stories from ours." François, recovering some of his composure, approached with 2 menus. His tense smile revealed the internal battle between protocol and fear of offending his most influential client. "Mrs. Ashworth, would you prefer a separate table?" he asked cautiously. Sarah looked around. At least 20 pairs of eyes discreetly observed the situation. Abandoning her daughter would be a bigger scandal than sharing a table with that woman. With admirable elegance, she took a seat next to Vivian. "We'll stay here," she declared coldly, "and bring us tea and pastries." Hope, overwhelmed by the easy turn of events, tried to stand up. "I don't want to cause problems, little one. I can wait outside." Vivian held her hand with surprising firmness. "Please stay. I'd like to get to know you." Something in the child's sincerity disarmed Hope, who slowly sat back down. "My name is Hope Rivera from Cedar Rapids in Michigan." Cedar Rapids. Vivian's eyes lit up. "My grandmother was from Grand Rapids, very close to there. Do you know Eagle Mountain?" The tension in Hope's shoulders began to dissolve. "Of course I do, child. From my ranch you can see it perfectly on clear days." While the conversation flowed between Vivian and Hope, Sarah observed with a mixture of irritation and something deeper she couldn't name. The peasant woman spoke of her small ranch, of her chickens and her 2 dairy cows, of how she grew heirloom, corn and beans following the techniques her father had taught her. "And why did you come to the city?" Vivian asked, nibbling on a pastry that François had served with evident reluctance. Hope's face darkened. "A company wants to build a tourist complex where my ranch is and other small properties. They say it's progress for the region." Her rough hands twisted in her lap. "But that ranch is all I have, the only thing my parents left me." "And the attorney is going to help you?" Vivian insisted. "That's what he said on the phone, that he has contacts and can stop the expropriation." Hope lowered her voice. "He asked for all my savings as an advance, almost $30,000. I was saving for emergencies." Sarah, who had remained silent, suddenly looked up. "What's the name of that attorney?" "Richard Montero," Hope replied with surprise at the elegant lady's sudden interest. Sarah's face transformed. "Did Montero ask you to come to this specific cafe?" "Yes, ma'am. He said it was important that we met in a prestigious place because investors interested in helping would come. Sarah exchanged a look with Francois, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Mrs. Rivera," she said in a controlled voice, "I'm afraid you've been the victim of a scam. Richard Montero is a known con artist who takes advantage of people in desperate situations." The words fell like stones on Hope. "It can't be. I checked his credentials online. He has an office on Wilshire." "A fake address," Sarah confirmed. "The police have been looking for him for months. He's defrauded dozens of small property owners with the same method." Silent. Tears began to roll down Hope's sunburned cheeks. "Then, my savings, my ranch." Vivian grabbed the woman's hand firmly. "Mum can help, right?" Her eyes locked with her mother's with an intensity Sarah had never seen. "You always say that the Ashworths have the power to solve any problem." The entire cafe seemed to hold its breath. Sarah Ellison Ashworth, known for her coldness in business and her contempt for sentimentality, found herself trapped in her daughter's expectant gaze and the silent desperation of a woman who had traveled to the capital with a hope that was now evaporating. "What company wants to expropriate your land?" she finally asked. "Central Developments," Hope replied with a deadened voice, "a project called Monarch Villas." An expression of surprise, followed by something like horror, crossed Sarah's face. "Monarch Villas, are you sure?" "Yes, ma'am. They say they'll build luxury cabins for tourists visiting the Monarch Butterfly Sanctuary." Sarah took out her phone and typed quickly, ignoring her daughter's confused look. After a few moments, her face visibly paled. "What's wrong, Mum?" Vivian asked, worried about the change in her mother's expression. Sarah didn't respond immediately. Instead, she called Francois with a gesture. "Connect me with James right now," she ordered in a low voice. While the maitre d' hurried to fulfill her request, Sarah turned to Hope. "Mrs. Rivera, do you have the documents related to the expropriation?" Hope nodded and pulled from her worn bag a manila envelope. "Here's everything. The notices, the appraisal they did of my property." Sarah reviewed the documents with an expert eye. Her expression became more grave with each page. Finally, she looked up and stared directly at Hope. "What's happening to you is more serious than you imagine," she said in a controlled voice. "And it's no coincidence that you're here today." At that moment, a distinguished-looking man dressed in an impeccable suit approached their table. "Sarah, Francois told me it's urgent." "James, I need you to call Robert from the legal department right now," Sarah replied without preamble, "and cancel my meeting with the director of St. Michael's Academy. We have a more important matter to resolve." The man, visibly confused, looked at Hope and then again at Sarah. "What's happening?" "I just discovered that Ashworth Group is indirectly involved in an illegal expropriation project in Michigan." Sarah pointed to the documents. "Through one of our subsidiaries." Vivian watched the scene with wide eyes. She had never seen her mother so upset or so determined. "But how is that possible?" James asked. "We have strict protocols for all land acquisitions. Someone has been using our name and our resources without authorization," Sarah responded harshly, "and we're going to find out who and why." She turned to Hope, who followed the conversation without fully understanding its implications. "Mrs. Rivera, what's happening to you is happening to many other small property owners in your region, and apparently, someone within my company is involved." The cafe had fallen into sepulchral silence. The regular customers, the business and political elite of America watched the scene with barely concealed astonishment. Sarah Ashworth, the Ice Queen as they called her in financial circles, was taking sides with an unknown peasant woman against corporate interests. 3 days later, the main hall of Cedar Mountain Estate, ancestral property of the Ashworths, on the outskirts of Los Angeles, buzzed with unusual activity. Journalists from major national media awaited expectantly. Rumors about a big corporate scandal circulated in whispers. Hope Rivera, dressed in a traditional embroidered jacket she had made herself, waited nervously in a side room. Next to her, Vivian played with Snowball, her chihuahua. "Don't worry, Mrs. Hope," the child said with confidence improper for her 8 years. "My mum always keeps her promises." Hope smiled shyly. "In my town, we say you shouldn't count your chickens before they hatch." "Well, this chicken is already well caught," Vivian responded with a giggle. Mom has been working day and night. I've never seen her so angry or so determined." In another room of the estate, Sarah Ashworth finished reviewing documents with a team of lawyers. Her face showed absolute determination. "Are we sure about all this?" she asked the man sitting before her. Robert Miller, legal director of Ashworth Group, nodded gravely. "All confirmed, Sarah. Edward Burke, vice president of regional developments, has been using company resources to finance illegal land acquisitions in Michigan. The Monarch Villas project was his personal creation, although he presented it as a corporate initiative." "And my signature?" Sarah asked with a tense voice. "Forged on all documents. We have his assistant's confession." Sarah closed the folder with a sharp bang. "Good. Then we proceed as planned." Meanwhile, in the main lobby, the murmur of journalists grew when Edward Burke made his appearance. Tall, attractive, with the perfect tan of someone who spends weekends in the Hamptons, the executive smiled confidently, greeting acquaintances among the press. "Any idea why Sarah called this press conference so urgently?" he asked a colleague from the board of directors. The man shrugged. "She only said it was an important announcement about the company's future. Maybe she's finally going to sell her stake as you've been suggesting." Edward widened his smile. "That would be the smartest move. A woman alone can't handle a conglomerate of this size. Since Charles passed away, the company needs firm leadership." The side door opened and Sarah Ashworth entered the room. She wore an impeccable navy blue suit, her hair neatly pulled back in an elegant bun. By her side walked Vivian, and to everyone's surprise, holding the child's hand, Hope Rivera advanced with timid but dignified steps. Edward Burke visibly paled upon recognizing the peasant woman. Sarah took position in front of the microphones arranged on a podium with the Ashworth Group logo. Her voice, clear and serene, filled the room. "I thank everyone for attending this call with so little notice. Today is an important day for our company, but also for America." Cameras flashed continuously as journalists took notes. 3 days ago, Sarah continued, "I had an encounter that changed my perspective on many things." She gestured toward Hope. "This woman, Hope Rivera, a farmer from Michigan, taught me unintentionally a lesson about dignity and resistance that I had forgotten." Edward Burke began moving discreetly toward the exit, but 2 security men subtly blocked his path. Upon investigating her case, we discovered that Ashworth Group appeared as the promoter of a tourist project that threatened to displace dozens of families from their ancestral lands. Lands that, I must emphasize, form part of the biological corridor of the monarch butterfly. A murmur ran through the room. Sarah raised a hand to request silence. "An exhaustive internal investigation has revealed that this project was being carried out without my knowledge or authorization. The responsible party has been identified, and corresponding legal actions are already in process." All eyes turned to Edward Burke, who was now visibly nervous, loosening his tie as if suddenly lacking air. "But today we're not here to talk about corporate betrayals," Sarah continued. "We're here to announce a new direction for Ashworth Group." Sarah signaled and Vivian stepped forward with Hope. The child took the microphone naturally. "My grandma Rose," Vivian said in a clear voice that immediately silenced the entire room, "was born in a small town in Michigan, like Mrs. Hope. When my grandfather met her, she was selling crafts at a farmer's market. She always told us never to forget our roots, that true nobility isn't in the last name, but in how we treat others." Journalists, captivated by the unexpected intervention of the child, listened in absolute silence. "When I saw how they treated Mrs. Hope badly at the Golden Cafe, I remembered those words," Vivian continued. "My grandma would have done the same as I did, offer her a place at our table." Sarah recovered the microphone, visibly moved. "My daughter at age 8 has reminded me of values I lost sight of along the way. That's why today I announced the creation of the Rose Ashworth Foundation, which will have as its objective protecting small farmers and preserving the monarch butterfly habitat." Hope, overwhelmed by emotion, could barely contain her tears. "The Foundation's first project," Sarah continued, "will be a community ecotourism program in the Cedar Rapids region, administered by the inhabitants themselves. Visitors will be able to stay in ecological cabins and learn about traditional farming while enjoying the natural beauty of the butterfly sanctuary. Camera flashes intensified. Journalists raised their hands, eager to ask questions. "What will happen to Edward Burke?" someone shouted from the back. Sarah looked directly at where the executive remained paralyzed under the discreet vigilance of the guards. "Mr. Burke is no longer part of Ashworth Group. The evidence of his illegal activities has been handed over to the corresponding authorities." A new murmur ran through the room. Edward tried to protest, but the guards quickly escorted him to a side door. "One last question," said a journalist from one of the major national newscasts. "Mrs. Ashworth, what role will Mrs. Rivera play in this new project?" Sarah looked at Hope with a genuine smile, the first many remembered seeing on her face since her husband's passing. "Mrs. Rivera will be the community director of the project. No one better than her knows the needs of the region and the value of preserving both nature and traditions." Hope timidly approached the microphone. Her voice, though soft, had undeniable firmness. "Where I was born," she said, "they teach us that the land doesn't belong to us. We belong to the land. The monarch butterflies come every year, from very far away, to remind us that we're all connected, that what happens to a small being like a butterfly affects us all. Thanks to this child," she added, looking at Vivian affectionately, "many families like mine will be able to continue caring for our grandparents' land and welcoming the butterflies every winter." The image of the elegant businesswoman, the simple peasant woman, and the child in school uniform holding hands in front of the national media became viral in a matter of hours. A month later, Vivian was jumping for joy in the yard of her new school. She hadn't enrolled in the prestigious St. Michael's Academy as her mother had originally planned. Instead, Sarah had decided to enroll her in a public school with an innovative environmental education program. "Mom, Mom!" Vivian exclaimed when she saw Sarah's car arrive. "The teacher says we can organize a field trip to Michigan to see the butterflies." Sarah, who now dressed in simpler elegance and wore her hair loose, smiled widely. "What a coincidence, because I just brought someone with me who can help us organize the best tour." The passenger door opened, and Hope got out of the vehicle. She no longer dressed timidly. She wore her traditional jacket and skirt with pride, and her smile radiated confidence. "Mrs. Hope!" Vivian shouted, running to hug her. "Did you come to visit us from Michigan?" "I came to work, little one," Hope responded with a smile. "Your mom and I are designing a program so children from all over the city can visit the butterfly sanctuary and learn why it's important to protect it." The three walked together toward the school exit, under the curious gaze of other parents and students. The story of how Vivian had defied social conventions at the Golden Cafe had spread throughout America, becoming a symbol of how a small gesture of kindness could trigger significant changes. "You know, Vivian," Hope said as they walked away, "in my town there's a saying, there's no better teacher than a heart that knows how to listen." Vivian smiled, squeezing her mother's and Hope's hands. "Grandma Rose said something similar, that true nobility isn't in what you have, but in what you give." Sarah looked at her daughter with infinite pride, recognizing in her a wisdom that transcended her young age. In a gesture that would have been unthinkable weeks ago, she put her arm around Hope's shoulders as they walked toward the future they were building together. Dear readers, we hope the story of Vivian, Sarah, and Hope has touched you and reminded you that true nobility resides in our actions. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special list with equally captivating stories about encounters that transform lives. Find it by clicking to your left. If you like this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give the video a thumbs up. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of the human heart and the power of small gestures. We hope to see you in the comments to learn which moment in the story touched you most deeply.